Okay, we're going to look at making data files for either analysis or visualization when we aren't given something pretty. Okay, so a lot of times we can download great data. It's in a format that we like, everything is good, we just use it. Other times we don't have something perfect, but we still really need to make that visualization. We still need to do that analysis. And in those cases, we're going to create the file ourselves. And there's a couple ways we're going to go over today on how to do that. The first is if the table is on a website. So this is a government website, and you can download this data as an Excel file, but we're going to pretend that you can't. Okay, and so we have a table, right? And if I look at the HTML behind this, I will see that it is a table element. And when I have something that is in a table element like this, it's very easy to grab this data using a browser extension. So browser extensions just extend the functionality of your browser in all sorts of ways. I have installed one called HTML Table Scraper. There are others, just find one that works for you. But what I'm going to do is right click here, come down to HTML Scraper, and I'm going to copy table to file. And then I'm going to take that file and I'm going to bring it into Excel, and we will see that this looks exactly like I would expect it to. I might need to delete a column or something like that. But otherwise, this file is completely usable. I can put it in Tableau, I can run my analysis, everything is good. All right, the second way that we might want to do this, though, is maybe a government agency puts out a PDF report. And that PDF has a table of numbers that you really want to work with, but I can't open a PDF in Excel. Okay. The other time that you might want to do this is when we have a bunch of Excel files that we kind of want to combine in a specific way. All right. So this is data from the TEA, and on their website, if I look at the annual dropout rates, they just give me a file for every year. But I might want to know how dropout rates change over time. Okay, let's say I want to go back 5 years. That's 5 different Excel files. And the easiest thing to do is just to create it yourself. So I'm looking at, here's the 2021 dropout rates, and I want to look at Bexar County. So the overall dropout rate was 2.3%. I'm just going to open a new Excel file, and I'm going to think about how I'm going to format it, and I'm going to think about putting it into Tableau and like what I would pull over to the different places to make my graph. So what I want here is a year column and a dropout rate column. And this is really easy. 2021, the rate was 2.3%, we said. And then I could go and find my 2020 data, and it's 1.4. So I'm just going to pull that in here. 2020, 1.4, and I could keep going, right? Maybe I'm pulling this out of a PDF, but I'm just typing it by hand, and it takes a second, but it doesn't take too long. I'm just gonna make up some values here. Okay, and I'm gonna pause the recording, and I'm gonna open this CSV in Tableau really quick. Okay, so I've saved this as a CSV. I have opened it in Tableau. Here's my little sample data. And now really quickly, I could make a graph showing the dropout rate over time. Let's look at one other thing though, because this is the dropout rate, but if I look at this data, something that's nice about it is I also have the data for different races. So the overall dropout rate was 2.3%, but the dropout rate for African American students was 3.2%. And what I really want to show is two lines, one for the overall rate, and then I want to look at how that changes depending on the race of the student. And to do that, we need to think about our data format, and we need to introduce a new concept. And that concept is the difference between wide and long data. So I'm going to change this really quick, and I'm going to say this is my overall column. And then maybe I have a column called African American, and we had 3.4, and in 2020 it was 1.8. I'm just going to fill this in really quick, and let's say that it just kind of rose over time. Okay, this is called wide data, and most of the data that we've looked at has been wide. And it's wide because each of my variables has its own column. And the problem with this is it's really good for analysis. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. When we visualize, we often need it in what is called long format. So I'm going to make a new Excel file, and I'm going to put it right beside this one. And we're going to look at what it means to put data into wide or long format instead of wide format. So when we have long data, we're going to have one column that's our variable and one column that is the value. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So in 2021, the overall dropout rate was 2.3%. And in 2020, the overall rate was 1.4. I'm just going to fill this in. Okay. So there's my dropout rates. The variable for these is overall, and this was made up 2019 and made up 2018. Now, I'm going to copy this because when I want to have another variable, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to African American and pull it down. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my values and copy them over. Okay, so this is long data. And it's long because each of those variables that used to be in a column, their own columns, are now in this variable column. And so instead of it being wide, it is long. And I'm going to pause. I'm going to save this as a CSV. I'm going to open it in Tableau so we can see why we need it to be in that format. Okay, so I saved my long file as a CSV. I have it in Tableau, and let's open it up in sheet 3. So again, I'm going to take year to columns. And now what we did before is we took our numbers and we put them in rows, right? And the difference here is if we think about the year 2021, we have two different rows for that, right? We have our overall graduation rate and we have our overall dropout rate and our dropout rate for African American students. And the problem is that this is summing up those numbers. And so this is inaccurate. It's not telling me something meaningful. But what we're going to do is, because we have this variable column, if we wanted to recreate our previous graph, I could say, okay, filter it, but only do the overall variable. And this is what we had for our first one. Or I could filter it and I could say, okay, only show me the dropout rate for African American students. And that's this. But where this becomes really powerful and useful is if I drag variable to color. Because now I can look at those variables side by side. And what we get from turning it into long is we have this variable column that has our different variables in it, and we can now color or split in different ways. So just a few examples of taking data and building data files that work for us. When we are scraping off an HTML table, super easy, it's just automatic. When we have a PDF or when we're kind of more manually pulling the data from different sources, we have to really think about the format that we need the data in for Tableau and kind of imagine the visualization that we want. If you are just doing one variable or something really simple, it tends to be really easy. However, if you are wanting to kind of compare multiple things like this, that's when we need to think about, does it need to be long data? And then if it does need to be long data, putting it into this format where we have one column that holds our variables and one column that holds our values instead of splitting those across columns.